Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. I have a non-fiction book for you today, which is always fun to share these. So this one is How to Share an Egg by Bonny Reichert. I hope that's how you say your name. It might be Reichert? Could be. So the tagline on this one is a true story of hunger, love, and plenty. Bonny knew her father was a Holocaust survivor, and she knew he wanted her to write his story one day, but she couldn't quite look that much pain and tragedy in the eye and get to writing. This story is her story, a woman who grew up under the shadow of her father's experiences, but also in the light of his deep love of life and family. It's also the story of her finding her own voice and her own creative path as a writer and as a chef. The title of the book comes from the moment when two starving Jewish boys were given one egg to share between them. One of those boys was her father, and later moments of shared meals with family where there was always enough to go around. Bonny Reichert is a Canadian journalist, editor, and creative writing teacher who also trained to be a chef. Her love of food and her knowledge about it deeply inform this book. Many of the chapters' titles are ingredients or delicious dishes, and she also makes the point that food is culture and the tie that binds us together. Her father was a restaurateur, her beloved grandmother taught her how to cook, her mother refused to serve the cheaper cuts of meat of her own childhood, and by making dishes his mother used to make, the author helps unlock her father's own childhood memories. As you'd expect from a writing teacher and a journalist, this author can write. This memoir is a very flowing read, and she comes across as very likable and relatable as she tells the story of her own coming of age and into adulthood. It's a slightly odd read in a way because it's not clear which story is uppermost, which means that all of the threads kind of suffer a little bit. The father's story of surviving the Holocaust casts a shadow over the life of the author, but the book is not his story. So when you're reading, you sort of either want more of that, more of his story, or for the author to step forward more. She's somewhat reticent about her own life. We barely meet her first husband before he's gone. She has 3 sisters, but they're barely part of her life, seemingly. The same for her own children. She seems not to have had many friends and even says at one point that she dropped them as soon as she got into a serious relationship. Now, I get the impression she wanted to protect these people from the spotlight a little, protect their privacy, which is fine. It's just really understandable. But as a reader, it feels like her life is just her and her father. Then we have her story of finding her creativity and selfhood through creating meals and working with food. These parts shine, but again, this could have been the main thread of the book, but it's not fully foregrounded. I was left feeling a little bit like I wasn't sure what the author was trying to say with this book. But that said, I did enjoy the journey and spending time reading this one, and I would read more by the author. What did strike me when reading this was the impact of her father's experiences on this daughter. Bonny is the last of 4 daughters, and we never know what impact this kind of stuff had on the elder children in the family, if they felt something similar or felt quite differently, but we do learn how it impacted Reichert. She loves her father, and it seems like she may have been his favorite child, though that could have been the impression that I got. He calls her his miracle child. That love becomes in some ways a burden, a weight, it seems. He had been through a terrible experience, so he wanted her to only ever be happy, rejecting her other emotions, even while trying to protect her. Bonny also talks about how she had to protect him, almost splitting her personality in 2 to keep him safe from the parts of her that he couldn't handle. It's hard on a child to protect a parent and can be a reversal of roles. She also talks about how she had a strong visceral reaction to the Holocaust stories and imagery, especially as a child, because her beloved father had lived through that. She would often have recurring nightmares and nausea. Almost seems like sort of panic attack, kind of something similar to that or something like that. But it felt like she had to listen to and be there for her father, even though it was causing this. I felt so bad for her and so much compassion at these times in her story. Our parents are so precious to us, but as children, the thought of something bad happening to them is also gut-wrenching and terrifying. It was part of a legacy of the survivors that I hadn't heard before. She also makes the point that when your parent has survived something like Auschwitz, your normal childhood feelings or life problems feel petty and irrelevant in comparison. I think this is some of the most interesting parts of the story, the way that these big world events don't just go away, just end. They continue to impact into future generations in concrete and unpredictable ways. Perhaps in ways unique to the Holocaust survivor specifically when we're talking about this book. It's not a hard read. It does have a couple of dark moments, or a few dark moments, but Bonny writes in a light way, drawing you along through her life. I liked her finding her way, finding her creativity. I'm really glad that she found greater boundaries as well as she did that. And I learned something while reading it. I think it could have been a little bit more defined, but I don't think that's unusual for a debut novel. But yeah, I I ended up just really liking this author as a person, and so I will definitely be looking out for more books from her. But yeah, this one is for you if you're interested in Canadian voices, culinary memoirs, or stories of generational trauma. And thank you to Penguin Random House and Appetite Random House for the copy of this book for review. Um, yeah, and that is How to Share an Egg. Have you read this one? I think a lot of people really liked it. Some people really didn't. So it's always interesting to hear what you guys think about these things. So I will catch you guys in the comments, and thank you for joining me. You can check out some of my other videos. I also have another channel and socials, so you can find links below if you want more of that. And if you want to hang out again, remember to like and subscribe. And you can always leave a comment, let me know what you thought, or let me know what else you might want to see. Thank you.